I read the script, and that provided a lot of insight into who Elwood is, and it was really great it was a really well-written script, so I was able to connect with the story. I picked up the book just to kind of dive deeper into the world, find ways to connect with Elwood more, and yeah, that was what the process was like. It was just trying to find a way to connect with him so that I could be as honest as possible when it came to portraying him. Yeah, it's a brand new way of doing things, and we really just had to dive into it. And we were okay to dive into it because Ramel is such a great person, a person that was really easy to trust. Brandon and I were able to get close while we were working on it, and that was another big thing that helped, get us through. We were bleeding on each other. We were able to do it together. We were exploring it for the first time together, and that goes for everyone not named Ramel. Ramel was the only one that was really kind of familiar with this language and this way that we shot it. Everyone else was, everyone else was learning, and we all dove into it, and we got into a rhythm eventually, and it was cool when we all did, and we really began to understand it and internalize how we were doing it. I think one of the harder scenes that I had to do was the White House scene. I remember that just being a tough day. We all had to go to, each individual person had to go to a kind of dark place to bring that scene to life. But after we were done for the night, again, we were all able to lean on each other. We were all there to support each other, and I think that was, really beautiful and a sign that we were on a special project. Yeah, I hope they let it sit with them. I hope that they let it stay with them. I think it's such a unique experience that is, it makes you feel many, many different things, and I think that being able to experience life through another person's eyes, which is what you get to experience in this movie, is something that is very important to be brought into the real world. I think that considering other people's perspectives is something that now more than ever is something really important. So it's what I want audiences to take with them.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have had a director like Ramel, in that the way that he wanted to tell this story, and he's spoken on it, so I'm not just making this stuff up. The way he wanted to tell this story is that rather than focusing on these historical elements and these people as like objects of history, as something, I don't know, just these kind of caricatures of the past, he wanted to approach them, give them as much life as possible, show that they have as much feeling as everyone that's currently living in the present day, as to not remove us from, I've been having a sleepy day, as to kind of erase this separation that might be felt in period pieces, or that we might feel by just reading the story about these statistics. So, to answer your question, and why I'm grateful for that, is I got to show up completely as I am, and I understand the story, but I got to show up and completely live in that world. So the preparation was more intuitive and more about being present and being open and hopefully honest. One thing, I got to witness, now Anjali's standing next to me, I got to witness so many just beautiful actors and also craftspeople making this film, but particularly for the acting, I don't generally have like a process to it all, and maybe I'm still exploring that, and I think maybe every project will inform how I prepare differently. But even with that, I think maybe there's some doubt at times. I'm like, I watch people like Anjanou or Hamish, and they seem to be completely in it, the way their body moves, everything. So I recognize that whatever I was doing, at some point I recognized that it was working. There's a scene that we have at the end, you saw the film, and I go to deliver this news to her, and she opens the door, and I'm just floored by this presence. And I think, in hindsight, as I looked back at that moment, just being open to everything that she was providing and everything that we were everything that both of us were bringing and that met in that moment, that I was so affected. And so it felt like, oh yeah, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's working somehow. I just hope people go in and open themselves up to this experience. It's going to be a different experience, and it's going to invite you to let go of maybe some preconceived notions that you might have of how you generally engage with a film. And I hope that you just go sit and accept that invitation and be willing to have a different experience and let yourself be moved however you will.
Working with Ramel Ross, first and foremost. I saw Hell County this evening, and I just thought it was one of the most stunning experiences I've ever had in a movie theater. And I knew that whatever he was going to do, it was going to be the most exciting thrill ride. And it just happened to be Nickel Boys. It's not so much about the larger cultural conversation. It's more about what happened to those children at that school. And that it's not unlike what happened in concentration camps in Berlin. It's not unlike what happened to unwed mothers in Ireland and how they were treated by the Catholic Church. It's not unlike that, and there was violence happening in our backyards, and we didn't do anything about it. And now we can, because we know about it. Yeah, I didn't have to do a whole lot of preparation because I had a tremendous script, and I could just pull from that. It was a bottomless well that I could pull from. And now in retrospect, I realized that I was essentially playing my grandmother, So it was nothing that I was aware of at the time, but it was what I was pulling from. I love I love isn't the word. They give what I want most when I'm watching something on screen, and that's honesty. It is so hard to do that in the absurd project of making a movie. You're essentially trying to do your job on a construction site, and to be able to do that and be honest and be kind and generous-hearted with the character that you're playing, and that's who these young men are. I just want people to know about what happened to those children at Dozier School. I want them to know that it wasn't an isolated thing, that those schools happened all around this country, and we have to be vigilant so it never happens again. Well, I don't see it as mourning. I see it actually as an embrace of, I don't know, my true self. You know what I mean? Like something that is pushing against the expectation of what women are supposed to be on these carpets. There ain't a ruffle on here. There ain't a sequin on here. Do you know what I mean? And it matters. It matters. So yeah, Balenciaga.
Yeah, I think the approach my co-writer Jocelyn Barnes and I took was to kind of get as far away from the nuances of Coulson's narrative and try to distill it to our best ability, to its sort of core relationality and its essence. It's such a powerful novel, it's almost impossible to adapt, so to let cinema do its own thing with it seemed to be the smartest route. It is, an extension from my art practice. I've been making photos for about 15 years in the historic South, and the language has evolved from Hell County this evening into, Coulson's narrative. It's basically like lifted up from that film and given to Elwood and Turner to view the world through. Well, one of the main goals was to make more legible through form the relationship between Coulson's narrative and the treatment of the boys and the larger ongoing conversations around visuality and systematic violence at large. I think that there's, in order for the children in the Dozier School and the Nickel Boys to be treated that way, they have to be looked at in a certain way, and that's part and parcel with the language of photography and cinema. I mean, honestly, even the extras that were like the Dozier Boys were all phenomenal. I think everyone came in with a distinct vulnerability and a willingness to kind of play and experiment. But specifically, Brandon Wilson and Ethan Arisi wore diamonds in the rough that we somehow found that needed no polishing, and just an opportunity to kind of show the world what they can do. I want them to go to the Dozer document and go to, the book Boys of the Dark, which was part of the source material for Coulson to write the book, and then to reflect. I think that there's a lot to be said and understood through the film's form and its relationship to reality and history.
I just trusted Ramel. He's a genius, and it was we didn't all know he was going to be a genius, but it just seemed like the only thing one could do with such frightening material is just trust your director and throw yourself fully into his hands, and he just caught us and carried us all. It's in the script that it's all shot in the POVs, but it's like then you get there and you're like, oh, you're really not going to be coming in any closer? Good. Let's keep it at that distance and we'll see what's happening. But then you never knew what was going to happen. Suddenly there would be an alligator on the set, and he always kept you guessing. I mean, the movie is an experience, and an experience that, every American should have the opportunity to have. It'll broaden your horizons.
We had so much fun, you wouldn't be able to tell by the nature of the film. But it was in such good hands, everybody was in such high spirits. The shooting it was wonderful, lovely. I think about those memories often, and they're all pleasant. I think the hardest part is really just dealing with the reality of the history that we were bringing to life. Well, I've told him several times, I can't wait to do it again. I always feel like I'm in responsible hands when he's around. I just be feeling safe with him. He's also a very large man, so I feel safe next to him in general. But I feel proud to be able to associate myself with him in any regard. Same with Jomo, and of course the rest of the cast. But his vision was so precise. I think that he probably reached very close to 100% of exactly what he wanted when he made this movie. Yeah, the history that was hidden. I'm from South Florida. I've never heard of the Dozier School for Boys until I read Nickel Boys. The fact that it was swept under the rug makes me uncomfortable, and I'm really grateful that this movie was being made. I'm really grateful Coulson wrote the book, because people should know.
It's important to not separate ourselves as Americans from our history. And kind of the embarrassing parts of our history, because they are also embarrassing parts of our present. And this film, I think, obviously with the source material, but also in the care that was taken to put everybody inside the storytelling is a really interesting solution to that problem of sort of how to make us palpably feel things that we're sort of conditioned to think of as history, as not really affecting our present. And so that was one of the many reasons I wanted to jump into this for a little bit. He's amazing, and his team, Jomo, the cinematographer, like everybody down there. I mean, the wildest thing about it was that there was no stress for me. They're doing this impossible thing, and I showed up, and they were just like, "Here's the thing, here's the camera. Don't even worry about it." And I was like, "Can I get some time with the monitors? Like, can I figure out what to do?" I was stressed out, and they were like, "Yeah, sure. Here you go, but you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. It's gonna be perfect." And they created this environment that still felt like acting, despite this incredibly technical thing they were trying to do. And that really, to me, just speaks volumes about what kind of artists they are.
The way that he makes a film is one of a kind. So I felt that every day we were not only experimenting, but also really, writing new rules and building a new way of making a movie. It was such a thrill. And Brandon and Ethan are so brilliant. It was just, even though the material was some of it is so intense and meaningful in that sense, Ramel is like such a joyous, funny, just wonderful person. So every day was a real thrill. I think it's a very immersive movie. So I think the most important thing is to see it on a big screen where you can have that experience collectively and you can open yourself up. And I think it's a very unique and moving experience. So I never can tell an audience what to take away from it, but I can certainly encourage anyone I know and care about to go see it on a big screen.
Yeah, I think that there's a way sometimes in traditional cinema and maybe third-person perspective cinema that, we naturally have maybe a little bit of a removal from the story. As audience member, we see in the theater an image when it's on the wall. I think that for Ramel, it was always a question about immersion, and is there a way that we can maybe puncture that membrane between audience and image to hopefully pull them into a more personal, a more subjective, and a more immersive experience. So really for us, it was about trying to create an image that allowed the audience to live inside the body, the mind, the consciousness of Elwood and Turner. Collaborating with Ramel was a dream. Like, genuinely, I feel like it feels like, in that first meeting, we started a conversation that to this day is unending. I feel like he is not only brilliant, but so deeply collaborative that it felt like play. Every moment, every day in prep, it felt like play. It felt like we were trying to build something that he and I had never seen before, and it was the kind of excitement every day for just trying to. For me, it's, thinking about the movie, thinking about the Jim Crow South, and thinking about, in the bodies of the protagonists, two young black men navigating a space that is often hostile to them, and a space where, quite literally, where their gaze goes can mean the difference between life and death. I think that there's something so powerful in sitting within that, and not even for the hard moments, but for the mundane moments, for the moments of love, of seeing a grandmother from the eyes of a grandson. I hope for audiences that it's an experience and an invitation into just either experiencing a body that they recognize or a body that they don't recognize, and kind of feeling that experience through the duration of the film.
Well, I worked with Ramel Ross. I produced his first film, and so I think I understood well his proposal to shoot the film in what he called a sentient perspective. And so we approached the screenplay writing as a kind of edit, actually, to begin with, working with images to carry a lot of the weight of the narrative and then expanding it eventually into a full screenplay. And then as a producer, following it all the way through the whole process with the other producers to really realize the vision through every department. I think it's an invitation for the audience to enter an experience in a different way. We try to really, we're so conditioned to seeing people in a particular way, especially when it's a story that has to do with brutality. And so we wanted to avoid violence on screen and create a different kind of imaging and inviting people into that experience. And also because of there are two actually perspectives in the film, and that interplay between those two characters and what that eventually means inside of the film, it felt like a good way to approach it. I like to see people reflect on how it relates to their own lives, actually. I mean, we're standing on the shoulders not only of Colson Whitehead, but also all of the boys that lived through this experience and all their oral histories and testimonies. And we're being invited all the time to look away from brutality, and actually it'd be great to end it. And so the only way we can do that is to really engage with it in a different way. And so we try to bring compassion to this project, and we try to help people. Hopefully people will find something that they recognize.
I think Ramel's visual style is more at play than just the words on the page. And Ramel is very visual. The first script of this was actually just images described. And then the second revision actually brought the narrative. So I think we were led by that approach, where it's more feeling and image first. Story kind of came second. I know that sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah, and it was a very collaborative effort between the music and the editing and post-production and everything. So I think the question you asked is cool, because it is true. Like, this film, I think, elevates the characters in the story and the true story that the fiction story is based on. So if anything, it just we're all contributing to this thing, and hopefully it'll bring this story up and present it to people that don't know about it.
Keeps their name ringing and puts, the point of view approach is very intentional, trying to not show what happened to them, but maybe show you how it might have felt. Well, we read it in the script and we weren't really sure what that was. And then we visited the set and got to hang out and and we saw it, and it really shaped how we approached it. We felt we could make a much more ambient and textural score that felt like it was like emanating from within rather than scoring the scene as an outsider, kind of like textural music that's like existing inside your body.
Because from the first person perspective, you could almost, some of the music we made could have been imagined or in the mind of the character.
Exactly. It's not tied to reality in a way film score typically has to be successful. It makes less sense. It's very appealing for us and Ramel, I think. It's not that literal for me personally. I think music and sound, when they come together and it's right, it sparks this like new third feeling that is it's more powerful than if you just listen to the music or just watch the picture. And I think for each person to have that for themselves is like kind of the goal and less prescriptive than like we're not trying to tell you anything, you know.
Yeah, and I would just add that I hope they notice smaller details in the world and you know, pay attention to things and appreciate them.